我宣布
The 10,150th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representatives of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, and Serbia to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. I request the protocol officer to escort His Excellency Mr. Denis Becirovic, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to his seat at the Council table. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Mr. Schmidt to participate in this meeting. I'll give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Mr. President, we wish to set on the record the fact that we disagree with the presence in this meeting of Mr. Christian Schmidt, especially in the capacity of the so-called High Representative. We wish to recall the fact that the United Nations Security Council did not approve him in any duty, and nor did the Security Council vest him with any authority or competency. We understand that the question of BNH has been on the Security Council under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter, and there has been a long-standing practice of approval of high representatives. Christian Schmidt, this did not apply to Christian Schmidt. In light of the above, we wish to underscore the fact that Schmidt never had, nor does he currently have the right to speak on behalf of the international community, nor to submit any documents whatsoever to the Security Council. We call for his statement to be viewed as the personal view of a citizen of Germany. We wish also to draw attention to the statement of Mr. Schmidt about him stepping down from his post, a post which he never officially held. He simply usurped the position. However, in light of these statements, his presence today at the Security Council is something which is completely nonsensical. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. I've taken note of the statement made by the Russian Federation. I invite Mr. Christian Schmidt to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I also invite His Excellency Mr. Stavros Lambrinidis, head of the delegation of the European Union to the United Nations, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Mr. Schmidt.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, esteemed Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, it is my duty out of the Dayton General Framework Agreement for Peace to give this Honorable Council a report about the current development in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I will underline that the country is moving along a narrowing path, one that leads either towards institutional sustainability and consolidation, economic revitalization, the rule of law and democratic governance standards, or towards further stagnation driven by a political obstruction and a gradual deconstruction of state institutions. While the overall security situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina remains stable, potentially disruptive tensions remain an issue of concern. EUFOR's presence remains both necessary and reassuring. As a matter of principle, the Dayton institutions, the OHR and EUFOR, remain in place, and it is up to the domestic actors to demonstrate political responsibility and local ownership. At the same time, stability should not be mistaken for institutional health. Even with no imminent security crisis, there is an ongoing crisis of institutional functionality and political responsibility. This affects the quality of governance, economic development, and the daily lives of citizens. More concerningly, we are witnessing deliberate attempts to deconstruct state-level institutions by blocking them and preventing them from performing the responsibilities they were created for. Against this backdrop, my report reflects what I consider to be the 4 priorities for the current year. First, the preservation of the institutional order established under the Dayton Peace Agreement. Second, restoration of institutional functionality. Third, a resolution of the issue of apportionment of state property. And fourth, ensuring the timely introduction of election technologies ahead of the general elections in October 26. The Dayton Peace Agreement brought peace to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this remains valid today. Yet, the constitutional order continues to be weakened from within. Ongoing disagreements over the interpretation and implementation of Dayton, disrespect for the ruling of the highest court of the country, and at times deliberate blockages continue to affect state institutions, gradually undermining their functionality to the point where the narrative of BIH not being viable becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The progressive deconstruction of state institutions and functions is further exacerbated by a climate of distrust driven by divisive and degrading narratives that erode the spirit of cooperation essential for a functioning state. In this context, it is deeply concerning that narratives portraying Bosnia and Herzegovina as a stage for a so-called clash of civilizations, along with renewed references to heighten fear rather than offer solutions for progress and reconciliation. Yes, there remains a lot to do in this context. As well, it remains important to not allow extremist or terrorist groups to gain ground. Steps taken by the leadership of the Republika Srpska entity in October 25 helped break the political deadlock and enable renewed engagement with the international community. However, this apparent to undermine stability and reform prospects. This return to more explicit secessionist themes was recently illustrated by the statements made by Mr. Dodik in the context of the Donja Gradina commemoration. The oscillation between engagement and confrontation undermines trust and hinders any genuine political progress. Furthermore, the persistent denial of the multi-ethnic character of citizens, but effectively hinders the sustainable return of refugees envisioned under Annex 7 of the General Framework Agreement on Peace. against, as they're reporting, against members of minority constituent peoples in the entity from biased public employment practices, implementation of non-inclusive education, and prevention of free expression of different identity to open glorification of war criminals. Free and fair elections are the cornerstone of democratic legitimacy. The introduction of safeguard mechanisms to protect election integrity is essential if the October 26 general elections are to command public confidence and provide a credible accountability mechanism. The absence of such accountability is one of the reasons for poor governance and state capture. In close consultation with the member states of the steering board of the them into question. On the issue of state property, my report reiterates the continued lack of progress. This unresolved question has become a major impediment to economic development, infrastructure, investment, and long-term growth. I remain firmly convinced that creating the legal and political conditions for the use of state property for protection projects in the public interest is urgent. Opening the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the country as a dynamic stemming out from the decision to construct the so-called Southern Interconnector pipeline designed to deliver liquefied natural gas political uncertainty and a persistent demographic decline, which election-driven spending likely to keep public finances under pressure in the foreseeable future. Structural blocking of state institutions of the state and its citizens. This is particularly concerning as economic stagnation fuels political radicalization. By contrast, economic development strengthens social cohesion and institutional credibility. It should therefore be a priority for responsible political actors. Needless to say, I support efforts undertaken by member states of the Peace Implementation Council These negative developments are obstructing the effective exercise of freedom of expression in the entity. In this last period, the international community has focused on domestic ownership. Regrettably, this approach has not been conducive to genuine engagement and constructive dialogue by domestic political leaders. This situation has obstructed tangible progress, including on Bosnia and Herzegovina's integration path to the European Union. Domestic ownership cannot mean institutional neglect. Responsibility commend the healing power of the ICTY up to today. There has to be a focus on undecided cases of war crimes, some of them at courts in the region. On the one hand, Bosnia and Herzegovina continues to experience a gradual erosion of institutional cohesion. On the other, there is clear evidence of social resilience, with citizens often succeeding in moving the country forward. Citizens continue to live together without broad-based animosity. However, deploying nationalism for political gains fuels emotion and creates fertile ground for division. While extreme voices remain loud, they do not reflect broader society. With continued support from the international community, citizens, civil society organizations, and responsible politicians can become the catalyst Bosnia and Herzegovina needs to break out of stagnation. There's an urgent need to provide hope for all. In 2026, the responsibility of the international community might be more subtle, but it's not less important. Peace, democracy, and constitutional order for Bosnia and Herzegovina should not be left to erode gradually and deliberately. On the contrary, the state institutional structure established under the Dayton Peace Agreement should be preserved and strengthened in a sustainable and irreversible manner. This will in turn also provide the basis for Bosnia-Herzegovina's Euro-Atlantic integration. Let me conclude with a point I raise here on my own behalf. Under the prevailing circumstances, I took my personal decision to end my mandate as High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina based on the Dayton General Agreement for Peace and several United Nations Security Council's resolution, and which I have received from the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council in 2021. As a result of this decision, I have already put the issue of identifying a successor Since today, I was foreseeably presenting for the last time a report in this council. Mr. President, I would like to thank the distinguished delegates and their countries for their commitment to the implementation of a Dayton Peace Agreement. It is high time to substantially complete its implementation to bring the office of the High Representative to a gradual phasing out according to the 5+2 agenda. Thank you.
感谢施密特。
I thank Mr. Schmidt for his briefing. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. I thank High Representative Christian Schmidt for his briefing today, and I welcome the participation of Mr. Denis Bečirović, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, at our meeting, as well as the representatives of the EU, Serbia, and Croatia. President, the United Kingdom thanks High Representative Schmidt for his dedicated service supporting peace and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and for his contribution to implementing the Dayton Peace Agreement. The Peace Implementation Council will now take forward the selection and appointment of a successor. We reiterate our support for a fully empowered High Representative as the cornerstone of civilian implementation of Dayton. We remain deeply concerned by the political situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. As the report sets out, some political actors continue to subvert democratic processes. They are obstructing legislative activity and abusing constitutional safeguards, stalling progress on Euro-Atlantic integration and the 5+2 agenda, including state property. Recent elections in Republika Srpska were marked by significant electoral fraud. With democracy and rule of law under attack, international support remains vital. We reiterate the importance of constitutional reform that reflects the needs of all citizens and implements European Court of Human Rights jurisprudence. In this election year, we underline the importance of strengthening democratic resilience. We support the rollout of election technology as a practical step to reduce fraud and rebuild public confidence in elections. Bosnia and Herzegovina's future cannot be held hostage by divisive politics. Various players are stoking ethnic and religious tensions as a way of advancing their pernicious agendas and stirring up more tension between all of Bosnia and Herzegovina's communities. Divisive rhetoric, including calls for secession or a third entity, is anti-Dayton and risks peace and stability. We call on all parties to reject all narratives which deepen divisions and misrepresent the country's challenges. President, Dayton obliges all parties to respect the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Full respect for Dayton remains essential. The report and ongoing political challenges underline why the High Representative, including the use of executive powers where necessary, Council. While the United Kingdom supports progress on the 5+2 agenda, those conditions have not yet been met. Until they are, the role of the High Representative remains essential to safeguarding Dayton to support these efforts. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom. I give the floor to the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Upon the agenda item, I wish to take this opportunity to congratulate the People's Republic of China on its accession to the presidency of the Security Council this month of May, and we wish them every success in their mandate. We wish to reaffirm our full commitment to working for Bosnia and Herzegovina for his briefing. Mr. President, my delegation wishes to thank you for having convened this meeting dedicated to the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we wish to serves as a reminder of the fact that maintenance of peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in any other country or region in the world remains a collective responsibility. My country takes note of the report that has been submitted, as well as the recent communications addressed to the Security Council on the implementation of the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Dayton Agreement. Mr. President, the DRC has been following with great concern and observing the indications of fragility that have been seen in Bosnia and Herzegovina. These include persistent political tension, the concerns that were voiced and set out out in the letters dating 11 February and 8 May 2026 concerning secessionist moves attributed to certain leaders of Republika Srpska, as well as the risks of these dynamics generating when it comes to constitutional order, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We wish in this regard to recall the fact that the Dayton Accords remains the very bedrock for peace, institutional stability, and peaceful coexistence amongst the constituent peoples of B&H. 30 years after to weaken constitutional institutions or to advance unilateral solutions is a risk factor when it comes to peace and stability. The Security Council therefore needs to remain vigilant and fully engaged in a preventive approach. Mr. President, the DRC recalls the fact that political leaders at all levels must exercise restraint and responsibility. They need to refrain from any incendiary rhetoric, any hate speech, any unilateral initiatives, or any action that is liable to weaken national cohesion or regional stability. We encourage all parties to embrace inclusive dialogue, consensus building, and peaceful means in accordance with the Dayton Accords, the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the decisions as respect for rule of law, regular operations of institutions, and the equal protection of all citizens, reconciliation, and trust amongst the communities. Mr. President, the DRC underscores the importance of peaceful coexistence amongst the various communities of B&H. Ethnic, cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity of the country needs to remain a protected asset, an asset protected by institutions and not a divisive liability. That have been recognized by competent jurisdictions, and the instrumentalization of identities inevitably rekindles tensions and delays the building of a shared future. In that vein, public institutions, educational systems, media, outlets, and political leaders need to all contribute to bring communities closer together and to promote tolerance and social cohesion building. We take note of the role played by EUFOR Althea, which has been authorized by the Security Council in the maintenance of a secure and safe environment in B&H. We encourage the pursuit of efforts to safeguard stability in the country and the and constructive dialogue in a manner that respects the sovereignty and political independence of each state. Mr. President, the DRC reaffirms our steadfast commitment to the purposes and the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, particularly respect for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of states, as well as peaceful dispute resolution. It is in this spirit that we reiterate our support for the sovereignty, unity, territorial integrity, and political independence of Bosnia and Herzegovina within its internationally recognized borders. Moreover, we call upon all parties to demonstrate responsibility, to engage in dialogue, and to exercise restraint, and to facilitate peaceful coexistence. To conclude, the Democratic Republic of the Congo reaffirms the fact that prevention remains one of the vital roles played by the Security Council. In that vein, my country will continue to support any balanced initiative which is geared towards preserving the sovereignty, unity, territorial integrity, constitutional order, institutional stability, reconciliation, and lasting peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Mr. President, we want to thank High Representative Schmidt for his report and for nearly 5 years of dedicated service. Those 5 years have built institutions, advanced prosperity, and brought us closer than ever before to fulfilling the promise of the Dayton Accords. Today, the threat of secessionist laws in the Republika Srpska has been withdrawn, and the authority of the Constitutional Court has been recognized. The Southern Interconnector Project offers the prospect of prosperity for all communities if their leaders can work together. Milorad Dodik has left public office. And this October, voters in Bosnia and Herzegovina will go to the polls under a new electoral law to elect new leadership. The international mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina is moving to a new stage, and we should all recognize High Representative Schmidt's role in completing this phase. For a high representative means leaving a successor with a far more limited set of responsibilities. Building on this foundation, Christian Schmidt helped establish the institutions for a sovereign Bosnia. The next high representative's task will be to transfer responsibility for running and maintaining those institutions to local leaders. One day, there will no longer be a need for such a role. By local leaders, driving pragmatic, locally owned solutions, facilitated by international voices rather than dictated by them. In this spirit of transition, as we look towards the Peace Implementation Council's meeting in June and consider candidates and proposals for the future of the international presence, we will evaluate candidates based on whether they meet this standard of trust and impartiality. With this in mind, we hope to work with all of you, but we also have our own candidates in mind if need be. Time is short. It is imperative that a successor be in place by the end of June to ensure not a victory or defeat for any party or group in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but a recognition of the completion of one phase of the international presence. Our message to Bosnia and Herzegovina's leaders is this: focus on practical cooperation and responsible governance, and work with each other to advance prosperity for all your citizens. Do not think of change as a zero-sum game, but as an opportunity to show the world what you can accomplish. To our international partners, trust in the wisdom of the principle of self-government and join us in working to support true sovereignty for all the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And to Christian Schmidt, thank you, sir, for your service and your dedication to the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's been a pleasure.
I give the floor to the representative of Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I join in congratulating you for assuming the presidency of the Council. And please be assured of Liberia's continued support. Liberia thanks Mr. Christian Schmidt for his important briefing and the quality of his service. Mr. President, Excellencies, Liberia approaches this debate not as a distant observer, but as a country acquainted with the long labor silent. The end when institutions become stronger than grievances, when citizenship becomes more powerful than ethnicity, and wars end when political leaders learn that restraint is also a form of patriotism. Bosnia and Herzegovina stands at a consequential moment. Nearly 3 decades after Dayton, the country over the distribution of authority. Recent developments remind us that peace agreements are not self-sustaining documents. They survive only when political actors choose preservation over provocation. Liberia, therefore, wishes to underscore the following points. First, democratic processes must remain instruments of legitimacy. Together with the subsequent annulment of results in several polling stations due to reported irregularities, reflects both the resilience the true strength of democracy is measured not by victory margins, but by the confidence of those who lose. As Bosnia and Herzegovina political competition. History teaches a very simple but unforgiving lesson. Words with vigilance. Societies emerging from conflict cannot afford the erosion of independent media, civil society, state does not become weaker because citizens ask questions. It becomes weaker when citizens become afraid to ask them. institutions alongside stronger efforts to confront hate speech and incitement before they calcify into political culture. Third, Liberia recognizes the continuing relevance of the office of the High Representative under the Dayton Framework. We acknowledge that perspectives differ within this council, yet the dependency, what they are really, are guardrails against aggression, or rather regression. So long as core provision of the and continued progress toward fulfillment of the 5+2 agenda. Fourth, the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and multi-ethnic character of Bosnia and Herzegovina are not matters for selective interpretation. Again, no society remains stable when constitutional order becomes conditional upon political convenience. Liberia urges all actors, domestic and external, to refrain from conduct that could embolden separatist tendencies or the socio-economic dimension deserves far greater attention in conversations about stability and security in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Persistent political analysis carries human consequences. Young people leave. We've seen that in my country. Public trust erodes. Communities become vulnerable to cynicism and extremism. A generation without economic hope becomes fertile ground for political instability. Liberia, therefore, encourages sustained strengthening institutions. Mr. President, Liberia's own history has taught us that reconciliation is not the absence of disagreement. And where leaders understand that national unity is not inherited automatically by states emerging from conflict, it must be renewed continuously through political wisdom and civic courage. To conclude, Mr. President, Bosnia and Herzegovina has come too far and sacrificed too much for the architecture of peace to be weakened by recurring cycles of confrontation. Liberia, therefore, of disputes. For in the end, the durability of peace depends less on the text of the agreements than on the character of those entrusted to uphold them. I thank you for your kind attention.
Schmidt for his briefing. We appreciate the efforts made by the Office of the High Representative over the years in the implementation of the civilian aspects of the peace settlement. The relevant parties would move swiftly and without delay to appoint a successor to facilitate and enable the authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina to complete the 5+2 agenda. I also welcome His Excellency Mr. Denis Beširović, Chairperson of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, in today's meeting, and I also welcome the participation of Croatia, Serbia, and the European Union. President, at the outset, I would like to reiterate Pakistan's unwavering support for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and rapid changes that do not augur well for the overall political environment in the country, particularly for its fragile inter-ethnic balance. Regrettably, the political tensions have continued to affect the governance setup with institutional paralysis genocide that engulfed the region did not begin with the first shot or the first atrocity. It started with words. Root again, and they deserve our unequivocal condemnation. The General Framework Agreement for Peace, coupled with the governance architecture, the country's constitution, and the constitutional and state institutions envisaged under this agreement remain the cornerstone for peace, stability, and the well-being and progress of all constituent people in Herzegovina can be best achieved by adhering to the fundamental principles enshrined in the Dayton Accord. We also recognize Bosnia's right to choose its own partnerships and a path towards integration in regional political to find ways for engaging in a constructive and meaningful manner to settle their differences and to work cooperatively for the welfare of all the peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The burden harmony and cooperation to build a future together in peace and shared dignity. I thank you, President.
Of Denis Micevic, chairman of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The situation in BNH quite rightly remains a subject of close scrutiny of the Security Council of the United Nations, first and foremost in the context of the implementation of the General Framework Agreement for Peace, which was endorsed by Security Council Resolution 10. Risky policy of the Western countries to undermine Dayton enshrined architecture of the country, which stipulates the equality of the three constituent peoples, the two entities, with the broad-ranging constitutional authorities. Particularly stark was the destructive interference in Bosnian affairs by Berlin. All costs preserve control of external governance of the sovereign state of BNH for the advancement of their egotistical designs. The West continuously sacrifices its long-standing international stabilization efforts a concept to strip the peoples of BNH of their national identity, their collective rights, and then you leverage to counter Western neo-colonialist expansionism. Interests of Bosnia and Herzegovina parties. We see the egregious violations of the violation of the principle of consensus-based decision and the Western Balkans region as a whole. For those who are prone to forget, I wish to recall the fact that back in the 1990s, it was the Western egging on by certain political actors that resulted in Bosnia-Herzegovina with the unilateral treated in this way today. A glaring example of this is the detention of a Serb General Ratko Mladić. At the very least, why he cannot be transferred to Serbia to serve out the remainder of his sentence. We call upon the mechanism to finally take that decision. This would help to alleviate the immense suffering that he is enduring and to deteriorate, responsibility will lie squarely with the mechanism, which has long become atavistic and needs to be shuttered at the soonest. Another egregious example is the plight of Radovan Karadzic. The British authorities, with the collusion of the mechanism, have created inhumane detention conditions for him. Civic organizations have assessed about humanism and the overriding need to respect human rights. Mr. President, to date, the main source of instability in Bosnia and Herzegovina remains the office of the High Representative, which, from an way to interfere in the domestic affairs of BNH, as if to justify the need to preserve the external protectorate over the country, the OHR is meting out legal violence against the sovereign country and it intends to continue to stoke domestic political unrest. The apotheosis here was the illegal so-called appointment to this post of the retired German politician, Mr. Schmidt, in breach of the procedures and international practice in circumvention of Security Council resolutions, and this resulted in the delegitimization of the OHR, as clearly shows that this the situation in BNH in the spirit of the notorious rules-based order. Mr. Schmidt, with the support of those, among others, who we heard speak today, once again is attempting to hypocritically shift reactions on Republika Srpska, attempting to blame Serbs and their leaders of all deadly sins. Agreement accord. Mr. President, we demand that Western countries cease their intervention in domestic affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The resolution to problems and friction needs to be resolved. These solutions need to be resolved through a wide-ranging, mutual respectful dialogue of the Bosnian parties themselves on the Serbs in defense of Dayton architecture and its centralized structure. Banja Luka repeatedly proposed reasonable initiatives for the establishment of internal Bosnian for post-conflict resolution in BNH, the achievement of robust and lasting international reconciliation is only possible on the Dayton International be achieved and for non-discriminatory equality of states through of the of their and equality of their status through the single state. Any attempt constructively engage in order to usher in a genuine post-conflict resolution in B&H. Thank you.
感谢俄罗斯代表。
I thank the
of Serbia, Croatia, and the European Union, who honor us today with their participation. More than 30 years after the signing of the Dayton Peace Accords, Panama considers the lack of coherence among different levels of government have given rise to separatist trends, tendencies, which, rather than bringing political leaders together, ends bordering on hatred and exclusion. For this reason, the stability of this country must not be taken for granted, as in particular, we reiterate our firm commitment to the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Volatility, the institutions and mechanisms created under the Dayton framework as a whole have demonstrated up until now their ability to preserve stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Likewise, we would highlight EUFOR Althea as an essential factor in maintaining peace among the communities. Including the citizenry to participate responsibly in a democratic spirit and in full respect for the rule of law. In this regard, particular attention must be paid to any rhetoric that minimizes or denies the Srebrenica President. Panama reaffirms its strong support for the framework established by the Dayton Accords, as well as for the full implementation of the agenda of 5 goals and 2 conditions, the 5+2, as a central element for the stability of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We also express our support for Bosnia and Herzegovina since Dayton. Whether that trajectory continues depends today more than ever before on the determination and capacity of its leaders to place the stability and the well-being of their people above any differences. Process with conviction and trusts that this Council will continue to give it members of the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council to redouble their efforts to reach consensus as soon as possible on the selection of a successor who enjoys the support of all its members, as well as that of the Security Council, hopefully, for the benefit of the legitimacy, stability, and institutional continuity
representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I thank him for his briefing. Mr. President, last December, the Security Council adopted a presidential statement on the occasion of the 30th anniversary We stress the need for supporting political stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina, strengthening state institutions, and encouraging dialogue among various parties. This must be economy, including the use of state property for development projects that serve public interest. 2. We warn against provocative rhetoric of curbing any conduct that reignites tensions and highlight the need for building bridges of cooperation among various segments of society. Political In this context, we welcome the observations contained in the Secretary General's report, namely that the people of Bosnia have endured decades of division, yet have frequently succeeded in moving the regional, and international levels. 3. Decades of violence and extremism necessitates the acceleration of international and regional efforts in coordination with neighboring states to encourage anyone with relevant information to come forward without delay. This would allow these families to finally find closure. 4. Mandate this coming October. In conclusion, Mr. President, its full support for the international
Christian Schmidt for his briefing and his late as well as the representatives of Croatia, Serbia, and the European Union. Mr. President, Bosnia and Herzegovina's unity and political remains the foundation of this achievement and institutions in Bosnia and Herzegovina which contribute to the country's stability, cohesion, and development. Greece remains firmly committed to the Dayton Peace Agreement and to its institutions, including the Office of the High Representative. We look forward to the designation of a new High Representative by the Peace Implementation Council with a view to concluding the remaining objectives of the 5+2 agenda. We will also continue to unequivocally support the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of BIH. Political actors from all sides must demonstrate sincere willingness to promote strengthening trust and promoting reconciliation in BIH. In the run-up to the October 2026 general elections, we urge all parties to refrain from the decisive rhetoric or incitement of animosity. We stress the importance of conducting an electoral campaign and process that is competitive, free, fair, and democratic for the benefit of the country and its peoples. Mr. President, a renewed momentum in Bosnia and Herzegovina's EU accession process firmly anchored in meaningful and substantial reforms must be pursued by all political leaders in the country. The European Council's March 2024 decision to open accession negotiations with Bosnia and Herzegovina marked a pivotal moment. Progress. We urge all political actors in Bosnia and Herzegovina to concentrate their efforts in promoting the necessary reforms and achieving tangible results for the benefit of all its citizens. 23 years ago, the adoption of the Thessaloniki Declaration affirmed the European perspective of the Western Balkans. That commitment firmly committed to the irreversible path towards EU accession. It is a recognition of the promotion of democratic values, peaceful coexistence, regional cooperation, good neighborly relations, stability, and shared prosperity. In addition, EU4 Althea is a tangible demonstration of the European Union's lasting commitment to the security of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the wider region. By contributing to maintaining a safe and stable environment, building trust, and strengthening unity. Greece has actively participated in Operation EU4 Althea since its inception. Cooperation in implementing reforms that help advance BiH EU's accession process is what is needed today from all actors involved in order to ensure stability and economic development for Bosnia and Herzegovina and the
of Greece. And I'll give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I would like to thank the High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Christian Schmidt, for his briefing today and for his latest report. I'd also like to thank the Chair of tragic war and upheld the peace in the country. Significant positive developments have taken place over the years, demonstrating the resilience of the people. However, based on ethnic and religious grounds. This kind of discourse is harmful, eroding trust, and risks weakening stability. We also note with deep concern reports of the normalization of glorification of convicted war criminals, including instances of genocide denial. We further notice reports of discrimination against returnees and a constrained environment for civil for October 4th this year. In the lead up to the elections, we strongly urge political leaders from all parties to exercise restraint, avoid inflammatory rhetoric, and act in a constructive manner that strengthens public trust and social cohesion. Dialogue and willingness to pursue de-escalation and reconciliation are more important than ever. There's a growing need to strengthen unity, not to Mr. President, safeguarding the Dayton Peace Agreement also requires protecting the institutions is established. Over the past 30 years, these mechanisms have played a key role in supporting stability and progress. We would like to extend our strong support to the Office of the High Representative. The office plays a vital role in securing progress and stability in the country, as it has done since the end of the war. We take note of the decision by High Representative Schmidt to conclude his service as the High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we thank him for his immense work throughout the years under the mandate of the Dayton Peace Agreement. It is now up to the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council to begin the process of finding his not happened yet. We'll look forward to the future without the need for international oversight and presence in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Strong and visionary political leadership and a willingness to seek the necessary compromises will help us move towards that goal. And Denmark remains firmly committed to supporting its path towards EU membership. This should be a shared Bosnia and Herzegovina will be the ones paying the price in case of another year of stalled reforms and inaction. We hope that 2026 will be a year of meaningful progress and greater unity. Mr. President, before ending, let me reaffirm Denmark's full support
I give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank the High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Christian Schmidt, for his latest report and for his participation today. Mr. President, after 3 decades, the Dayton Peace Agreement remains the cornerstone of reconciliation, peace and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The institutions established under the agreement, including the Office of the High Representative, retain an important role in upholding successor by the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council. We express our continued support for the Office of the High Representative in carrying out their mandate to uphold the principles and obligations the constitutional order and the rule of law in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Secessionist and inflammatory rhetoric introduces threats of instability and and democratic governance across the country. The continued efforts of EUFOR Althea are contributing to a safe and secure environment and supporting the authorities of Bosnia and Herzegovina in aspire to. Mr. President, Latvia reaffirms its strong support for Bosnia and Herzegovina's European perspective and encourages its leaders it is essential to ensure that the electoral process is conducted in a manner that is transparent, credible, inclusive, and fully consistent with international democracy. Mr. President, let me conclude by reaffirming Latvia's strong commitment to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and multi-ethnic character of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and to supporting all its people in building a peaceful
I would like to thank the High Representative Christian Schmidt for his presentation and welcome the presence at this meeting of the Chair of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the office in the implementation of the Dayton Accords. Mr. President, following the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Accords last December, Colombia recognizes the efforts of Bosnia and Herzegovina to consolidate itself as a sovereign, democratic, and multi-ethnic country. To the general elections to be held in the second half of this year, which we hope will proceed in a transparent and inclusive manner and in accordance with universal standards of equality to advance in its full implementation in an inclusive manner, responding to the country's current realities while respecting its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence. Colombia calls on the parties to foster in order to consolidate sustainable peace. In this regard, strengthening the rule of law, together with broad participation by civil society and the full implementation of transitional justice measures are fundamental for a shared future. Likewise, preserving historical truth, rejecting denialism, and refraining from glorifying atrocious crimes of atrocity constitute essential pillars for preventing recurrence and consolidating genuine reconciliation. Investment in inclusion and intercommunal cohesion is an investment in the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina and contributes departure of young people leaving the country due to the lack of opportunities and effective representation. Colombia hopes that action will be taken to ensure that youth are protected, empowered, and fully included in efforts towards lasting peace building and sustainable development, guaranteeing their full participation, responding to their needs, and preventing all forms of peace and security. We urge the Office of the High Representative to deepen its gender-focused analysis through the presentation of information on gender-based violence and gender equality. Particularly in Republika Srpska. Mr. President, my country recognizes the important role of the international community in supporting the implementation of the 5+2 agenda in order to advance toward the full self-government and peaceful coexistence in Bosnia and Herzegovina and its unity as a sovereign, democratic, and multi-ethnic country. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Colombia. I now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
In particular, His Excellency, Mr. Petrovic, Chairman of the Presidency. We also acknowledge the participation of Serbia, Croatia, and the European Union in today's meeting. The Council's engagement on Bosnia and Herzegovina reflects our shared stakeholders. Recent developments present both opportunities and challenges. Although the reporting period has been marked by political and structural challenges requiring our collective attention, we note the relative de-escalation signals ongoing international support and continues to play a positive role in maintaining an environment conducive to dialogue and development. Mr. President, it's essential agreement for peace, which remains basis for stability and cornerstone for peace. Second, experience has shown that inclusive dialogue and consensus building are vital for sustainable peace. Sustainable solutions require locally driven consensus among all stakeholders, strengthen state institutions, and meaningful reforms for the benefit of all citizens. We urge all parties to use existing constitutional frameworks, engage constructively the potential for positive transformation and offers a foundation for continued cooperation. It's essential for the international community to maintain its facilitation and constructive support for Bosnia and Herzegovina development path, including its European aspiration. Finally, in light of Mr. Schmidt's decision to step down, we believe this juncture presents an appropriate opportunity for a comprehensive review of the role of the High Representative with the view to ensuring that it continues to serve the best interest of Bosnia and Herzegovina. At the same time, we reaffirm our view that the process of selecting the High Representative should remain consistent with established practice, including its conduct within the peace implementation Mr. President, to conclude, we reaffirm our unwavering commitment to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Somalia is committed to working with all parties toward all efforts that promote peaceful, inclusive, and multi-ethnic society in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We are confident that through engagement and renewed respect for the General Framework Agreement for Peace, positive outcomes can be achieved for all communities and the wider region. I thank you.
Denis Bechirovich, and I would like to welcome the High Representative, the permanent representative of the European Union and representatives of Serbia and Croatia. I also wish to thank the High Representative, Mr. Christian Schmidt, for his briefing and for the important information he shared. This shows 30 years after the signing of the Dayton and Paris agreements, which ended the war, that the path remains long when it comes to the achievement of a stable Herzegovina. These principles are vital. Casting doubt upon them through nationalist rhetoric or separatist threats is not acceptable. Mr. President, France supports all of the efforts of Bosnia and Herzegovina to make progress through the necessary reforms on the path towards accession to the European Union. This was opened nearly 2 years ago. Believes that the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as that of all of the Western Balkans, lies with the European Union. That is the hope of the youth of that nation and the direction of the arc of history. This was the message that was recalled by the President of the Republic when he hosted on 29 October last in Paris the 3 members of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the presence of the European Commissioner responsible for enlargement, Madam Marta Kos. We call upon all political actors in initiating reforms for the benefit of the people. The international presence in Bosnia and Herzegovina remains necessary to provide for the stability of the country and the region. The European EUFOR Althea operation has since 2004 played a vital role in this regard when it comes to the civilian aspects of the Dayton Paris agreements. Dayton Paris agreements. I wish to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Schmidt for the work that he has done and to extend our deepest gratitude. In 2008, the goals of the reforms enshrined in the to the reform process that can help to achieve that. The question of the succession of Mr. Schmidt will be discussed during the forthcoming meeting of the Peace Implementation Council on the 3rd and the 4th of June next in Sarajevo. Bosnia and Herzegovina will conduct elections in October. This will be important exercise in democracy. It is of critical importance for the elections to be held in free, equitable, transparent conditions, buttressed by meaningful progress in terms of electoral integrity. Bosnia and Herzegovina can count on France's support and that of our partners in their path towards Europe. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of China. Bosnia and Herzegovina is an important country in the Balkans, one that has suffered the ravages of war, with the people yearning for peace and prosperity. Mutual support and harmonious coexistence among all ethnic groups is conducive to the country's situation has remained volatile. Constant disputes between different ethnic groups and political parties have severely impacted its internal stability and economic development agenda. This year, Bosnia foster a stable and enabling political atmosphere to ensure the smooth and peaceful conduct of the elections. Second, ethnic reconciliation must be firmly advanced. China looks forward to lasting peace and long-term stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina, supports all parties in resolving their differences through political negotiations, and we hope that the three peoples can live in harmony and greater mutual trust to achieve inclusive reconciliation. Be made to promote sustainable development. Over the past few years, against the backdrop of political turbulence, Bosnia and Herzegovina has faced severe challenges such as slow economic growth, rising inflation, and cooperation in areas that secure people's livelihoods, thereby advancing the implementation of the Sustainable Development Agenda. Fourth, it is essential to uphold the principle of non-interference in internal affairs. The destiny of Bosnia and Herzegovina should be in the hands of its own people, and its affairs should be independently decided upon Security Council. Both the institution of the High Representative and the Bond powers are special arrangements for a special period. They should not be prolonged, much less made permanent. China's position on the issue of Bosnia and Herzegovina is consistent and clear. We respect its national sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, as well as the independent choices made by its people regarding the future of their country. China remains committed to develop the country and tranquility in the wider region. I now resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Denis Beterovich, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Respected Chairman, esteemed Excellencies, at the beginning of my address, I take the opportunity to greet the Chairman of the United Nations Security Council, the esteemed ambassadors of the United Nations Security Council member states, and other ambassadors, as well as Mr. Christian Schmidt, High Representative of the international community in Bosnia and Herzegovina. From the report of the High Representative, it can be observed that the political and security situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina is complex and challenging. In Bosnia and Herzegovina. Ladies and gentlemen, despite numerous challenges, Bosnia and Herzegovina has achieved significant progress on the European and Euro-Atlantic path. The European Council on 15 December 2022 decided to grant Bosnia and Herzegovina candidate status for membership in the European Union. The European Council on 21st March 2024 adopted a decision to open accession negotiations with Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have adopted and submitted 6 reform programs of Bosnia and Herzegovina to the NATO headquarters in Brussels, and preparations are underway for the adoption of this document for 2026. Bosnia and Herzegovina has fulfilled the conditions to receive an invitation for membership in NATO. Our results would have been even better if there had not been constant obstructions and blockades from the entity Republika Srpska. With the aim of an objective understanding of the current situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it is necessary to point was a victim of brutal aggression from 1992 to 1995. Joint criminal enterprises were carried out against the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Genocide was committed against Bosniaks, the only genocide in Europe after the Second World War. Great state protagonists are attempting, even in the post-Dayton period, to realize the objectives that were not achieved during the armed aggression. To an incorrect diagnosis of the situation and thereafter also to possible new wrong steps. This must not be allowed. Ladies and gentlemen, a very difficult year 2025 is behind us. The anti-Dayton policy of the leadership of the entity Republika Srpska brought Bosnia and Herzegovina to the brink of armed conflict. The worst scenario was avoided thanks to institutional and responsible action in the legal and foreign policy domains. Also, we have learned one important lesson. Any endangerment of particularly wish to warn of the danger of undermining the role of the High Representative. The High Representative exists on the basis of Annex 10 of the Dayton Peace Agreement, already at the end of 1995 that this is an important institution for the protection of this international agreement. They knew that the overall agreement could not function without Annex 10. The Dayton Peace Agreement is not a menu from which you choose what you want and what you do not want. It is an international agreement that must be respected in appoints the new High Representative. The competencies and mandate of the High Representative are not jeopardized. The closure of the office of the High Representative can be discussed only after the 5+2 program has been fulfilled. To conclude, the problem of Bosnia and Herzegovina is not High Representative, but rather the anti-Dayton policy that openly advocates the destruction of the Dayton Peace Agreement and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Ladies and gentlemen, let us be completely clear and bold. It is the leadership of the Republika Srpska entity and not the High Representative that is destroying the Dayton Peace Agreement. It is time to stop those destroying the agreement and not weaken the institutions protecting it. Neighboring countries, the Republic of Serbia and Republic of Croatia, do not have the right to interfere in the internal matters of the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina. They are not guarantors, but signatories of the Dayton Peace Agreement. Therefore, Serbia and Croatia have assumed an additional international obligation to respect the independence, sovereignty, and anniversary of the Dayton Peace Agreement emphasized the importance of respecting the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and constitutional order of Bosnia and Herzegovina. On that occasion, the members of the steering board particularly emphasized that Bosnia and Herzegovina was not created the entities exist on the basis of the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina and do not have their own sovereignty. The leadership of the entity Republika Srpska continues to endanger the Dayton Peace Agreement. They national law. Ladies and gentlemen, it is scandalous that the leadership of the Republika Srpska entity concluded a contract with a lobbying firm with the aim of dismantling the Dayton Peace Agreement. In this contract, the main objectives and contesting the fundamental parts of the Dayton Peace Agreement. Such anti-Dayton policy directly endangers peace and stability in the entire region. This also contains elements of propaganda of the kind we witnessed prior to the genocide against Bosniaks. I will be clear, this is the renewed activation of genocidal propaganda. Politicians who celebrate convicted war criminals are attempting once again to turn the victim into a target for a new genocide. This is unacceptable. This such unreasonable policies caused enormous evil during the 1990s and must be cut off at the root, as they may again cause conflicts and suffering. The United Nations Security Council, I wish to be very clear. Advocating ethnic divisions in Bosnia and Herzegovina is not a policy. It is a direct threat to peace. History teaches us that whenever maps of the partition of Bosnia and Herzegovina were drawn in Belgrade and Zagreb, the citizens and peoples of my country suffered. It is our common duty and responsibility and economic progress. One of the frequent political deceptions of anti-Dayton forces is the creation of fear of unitarism in Bosnia and Herzegovina. To speak about the danger of unitarism and centralism in a deeply decentralized Bosnia and Herzegovina is completely meaningless. Intimidation with alleged unitarism has the aim to shift attention away from the real problems of Bosnia and Herzegovina, deepen ethno-national clearly stated that this is a political narrative of great state protagonists. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm not addressing you only as the chairman of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also as the voice of millions of people from Bosnia and Herzegovina who believe in the future. Our future is not based on divisions, but on knowledge, innovations, and the dignity of every person. My vision of Bosnia and Herzegovina is a stable, secure, educated, and digitally developed European according to the final and binding judgments of the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina, state property is the property of the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina. There must be no political bargaining on this matter. Second, it is necessary to proceed with the implementation of the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. In that process, it is necessary defines the supremacy of the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina over the entities. In that context, the message of the members of the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council is also important, that the Constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina must be fully respected and that it has precedence over entity constitutions and laws. Fourth, of EUFOR Altea. The presence of EUFOR is important for the preservation of peace and stability in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also in the region. Fifth, for the stability and security of Bosnia and Herzegovina, it is important to dynamize the path of Bosnia and Herzegovina towards full membership in NATO and the European and Herzegovina as an independent broadcaster at the level of the state. Finally, on behalf of the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina, I sincerely thank the friends of our country. We have not forgotten the assistance we received from many UN member states. Bosnia and Herzegovina appreciates this
I thank His Excellency Mr. Becirovici for his statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Stavros Lambrinidis, head of the delegation of the European Union to the United Nations.
Down as High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, I thank him for his dedicated service over the past 5 years, and I also thank him for his important briefing today. I also wish to stress that it is the task of the steering board of the Peace Implementation Council to appoint a successor to the High Representative. Chair, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the European Union. I note that the commitment negotiations with Bosnia and Herzegovina. But I also note with regret that this reform dynamic has since stalled. The European Union urges all political actors to renew the country's focus on progressing on the EU path, taking of Bosnia and Herzegovina need to be respected. Chair, EU4Althea continues to play a key role in supporting the authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina in maintaining a safe and secure environment for all citizens. In closing, I reiterate the EU's unequivocal commitment to Bosnia and Herzegovina's EU perspective as a single, united, and sovereign country. Thank you.
Mr. President, at the outset, it is not the reports before us, but the principles that guide our position. Reports may change from cycle to cycle, but principles should not. In that spirit, following our recent consideration of the Secretary General's report on AMNIC and the situation in Kosovo and Metohija, Serbia allow me to reiterate what we stated at the previous meeting on this matter. Serbia reaffirms its consistent and principled position of respect for the territorial Nearly 3 decades after its conclusion, the Dayton Agreement continues to provide a carefully balanced framework that reflects the realities of Bosnia and Herzegovina's internal structure. Its consistent and good faith implementation in all its aspects remains essential for preserving stability and ensuring the effective functioning of institutions. In this regard, Serbia underscores that sustainable progress can only be achieved through full respect for the constitutional competencies of both entities and the equality of the 3 constituent peoples as enshrined of the role and responsibility. In the interest of preserving regional stability, we have often chosen restraint in responding to actions and rhetoric that people want to stay and create, where tourists arrive and investors invest. This potential exists. It just needs to be seized by joint forces. Our positions do not always have of regional peace and cooperation, while reminding that the success of such an approach requires the goodwill of all parties. Interpretations of the constitutional framework. The issue is not centralization versus decentralization, nor functionality versus protection. What is needed is precisely what the Dayton Peace Agreement has already prescribed: constitutional balance and functionality through consent. In fact, the current political tensions in Bosnia and Herzegovina further demonstrate the importance of avoiding approaches that reinforce competing political dialogue. As long as domestic actors rely on the expectations or practice of international intervention to resolve political disputes, incentives for compromise tend to diminish. Moreover, political accountability shifts away from those who should bear it. In that sense, strengthening local ownership and the responsibility of domestic actors is not only a democratic principle, but also a functional prerequisite for long-term stability and sustainable political development. Serbia believes that the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina lies in the hands of its legitimate domestic actors. We share the view that lasting outcomes must be shaped locally, led by domestic actors, with international engagement focused on Serbia firmly supports the European integration of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This process represents a shared objective within the country. It is also a shared regional objective and unifying framework for long-term stability and prosperity in the Balkans. We see this path as fully compatible with the Dayton framework. Progress regional stability and good neighborly relations. We remain fully committed to further strengthening cooperation with Bosnia and Herzegovina in all areas of mutual interest, including economic development, infrastructure connectivity, and people-to-people ties. Such cooperation contributes not only to bilateral relations, but also to the broader stability and prosperity of the Western Balkans. In the words of President Vučić in the UN General Assembly, we shall not hesitate in our resolve to promote regional stability in an effort to contribute to global security. In doing so, we will continue to be guided by the principles of the The peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the region deserve a future shaped less by political theatrics and mutual recriminations, and more by dialogue, economic cooperation, and responsible leadership. Serbia remains committed to such a future. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Serbia. I now give the floor to the representative of Serbia. Croatia.
President. Croatia reiterates its firm support for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, constitutional order, and international as High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina and thank him for his commitment over the past 5 years to assist the country in addressing its long-standing and persistent challenges. Context on how and why certain long-standing issues, including those related to electoral reform and to political representation, emerged in the political debate and why they persist, would contribute Paris Peace Agreement remains the cornerstone of peace, institutional balance, and democratic power sharing in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Its principles, including the constitutional equality of the three constituent peoples, Croats, Bosniaks, and Serbs, and the democratic rights of all citizens must be fully respected. Croatia opposes all policies and rhetoric that undermine the Dayton framework, Croatia remains Bosnia and Herzegovina's strongest advocate on its path towards the European Union, while also contributing to its resilience, security, and connectivity through strategic infrastructure and circumstances, strengthening Bosnia and Herzegovina's European integration, energy resilience, and regional connectivity represents an important contribution to long-term peace, stability, and economic development in Southeastern Europe. We particularly commend the constructive role by the Council of Ministers Chairwoman Ms. Borjana Kristo in advancing the European reform agenda, and welcome the opening of EU accession negotiations, which demonstrated that progress is possible when dialogue, compromise, and institutional cooperation prevail. This momentum must now be used to advance key reforms, particularly in the areas of the rule of law, institutional functionality, and electoral legislation. Electoral reform remains essential not only for strengthening the integrity and transparency of elections, but also for ensuring legitimate political representation of the constituent peoples. With the 2026 general elections approaching, it is essential to preserve equality among constituent peoples and non-discrimination of citizens, refrain from divisive rhetoric, European integration is also a matter of broader regional stability and security. Croatia will therefore continue to support all efforts aimed at a stable, democratic, and prosperous Bosnia and Herzegovina, founded on the Dayton framework, institutional legitimacy, constitutional equality, and genuine partnership. And a very important moment at the Security Council to kick off his election campaign. And I apologize to the Council, but I do need to offer a response. When it comes to a conference that he mentioned, organized by civil society and the we firmly reject any implication that the Republic of Croatia interferes in the internal affairs of Bosnia and Herzegovina. As Bosnia and Herzegovina's closest EU neighbor, with which we share 1,000-kilometer land border, and expert support to Bosnia and Herzegovina's reform and integration efforts. Our bilateral cooperation is extensive and constructive. Economic ties between our countries are strong. The joint sessions of our two governments further demonstrate exceptionally high level of cooperation and mutual commitment. Such engagement fully respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina and should be viewed as a contribution to regional stability and good neighborly relations. Bosnia and Herzegovina is fully consistent with international law and the Croatian Constitution. I thank you.
感谢
I thank the representative of Croatia for their statement. The representative of Serbia has asked for the floor once again. I give the floor to him.
Mr. The underlying problems, which evidently cannot be reduced solely to the accusations directed at Republika Srpska. We have also noted repeated allegations directed against Serbia. For the Dayton Peace Agreement, to which Serbia is a signatory and, as such, one of the guarantors. This kind of provocative statement does not contribute to the atmosphere of trust. Inconsistent with the Dayton Peace Agreement, and calls on all actors involved in political processes in Bosnia and Herzegovina to act with restraint, responsibility, and full respect for the delicate constitutional balance established by Dayton. Political differences should not be addressed through public confrontation or accusatory rhetoric. They must be resolved through dialogue, diplomacy, and mutual respect. We are fully aware that, particularly in periods of heightened political campaigning, rhetoric directed against neighbors may bring short-term political benefit. Yet, lasting stability can only be built by strengthening trust, reducing tensions, and fostering a spirit of cooperation across the region. Serbia supports a comprehensive and enduring relationship of good neighborliness, not because it is expected by others, but because we are deeply convinced that it is in our shared interest. Simply put, our future cannot be built without one another.
I thank the representative of Serbia. The representative of Bosnia and Herzegovina asked to make yet another statement. I give the floor to the representative of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, first, we regret that any mentioning of election process that is in front of us and claiming that we are, Mr. President Bečirović is interfering in election process by misusing this table and this honorable event is more than regrettable, and I won't say further. Instead of going into details, I just want to call my colleagues. What Mr. President Bečirović was talking about is actually the event that distinguished colleague is mentioning, in which, with presence of his colleague, Special Envoy of Minister of Foreign Affairs, this map was basically speaking produced.
map of division of the country along ethnic lines, where you see Croatian, Serbian Republic, and Bosniak Muslim Republic, which is something that our ministry strongly condemned, and you're familiar with it. And for my dear colleague on my right side, I just reiterate, we need you to actually stop implementing the slow motion destruction of Dayton Peace Accord and the slow motion secession of the country by implementing the document that you officially adopted by the governments and institutions of Republika Srpska and Serbia. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the representative of Bosnia and Herzegovina for the statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.